You work so hard, you're underpaid. And when you overperform, which she's talking about people who overperform and they're rock stars, and then it's almost like if you overperform, the abuse is worse. And then they're like, why is everybody quiet quitting? Why is everybody just doing the minimum not to get fired? Because there's no incentive to overperform. Because when you overperform, you're abused even more. That sounds a lot like spousal abuse, doesn't it?
Yes! Okay, I love this. It's taken me a long time to connect all these dots, but I swear to God, once you see it in one area, then you see it in other areas, and you're like, oh my God, it's the same thing. Okay, so I'm gonna link my mutual. She's amazing. Go follow her. I'm gonna link her video, and then also she was stitching my other mutual, Lorraine. Follow both of them. So I want to tell a story about working for the Census and the film industry, and how I started to connect all these dots. That like, not only is this like abusive, and that the more you do, the less you get, and the more they exploit you. But then, when I finally started dating at the age of 36, and that happened in a romantic relationship with a complete like psychopath, I finally experienced on the interpersonal, like one-on-one level in a romantic relationship with a man who was bought into all of this stuff. And you know, he hated women, right? So I really finally connected all the dots when I saw it happen in my home with my I don't even know what you want to call it. The dude I was dating, boyfriend, whatever. And I think that radicalized me more than anything, because I was like, God, it's literally the same thing. My relationship with work ends up feeling abusive. My relationship in partnership with men feels abusive. My relationship to like all of this stuff, like my government, the US, but you know, France too, but more the US, like, whoa, terrifying government. And then I'm a white woman, able-bodied, cishet, like I middle class, like I have all of the things that make me like less exploited than the average person. So I can't even imagine how much worse it is with each intersection, right? But when I worked for the Census, I'm going to tell this through story, because it was like, I was like, wow, everything really needs to be a team sport. Because, you know, I like having, when I moved to New York, I had been working in like a very toxically masculine bro culture as a whitewater raft guide, you know, ski instructor, backpacking guide, like all those things, right? And some of the men in that industry were very healthy and awesome, but those tended to be more in like the, like working with schools and backpacking guys, but like the rafting world, terrifying. Men like literally flipping boats on purpose, traumatizing people. I've talked about that a lot. So then when I moved to New York to pursue my creative endeavors, I ended up being a backpacking guide in New York, and I lived in a cubicle in an office with 12 other people, and literally like walked around, mattress on the floor, whatever. It got me to New York, and they provided housing. And then I moved into the film industry. And so I had come from, you know, in the world, besides like the ski and rafting world, it was very community minded. And I loved that. And we would trade, you know, days, who would be the leader, and we dealt with conflict and like resolving conflict, and you know, and surviving in the wilderness as a group, right? And how does personal responsibility affects everybody, and how we take care of each other, right? I went from that to the film industry as as someone not in the union. So this is what, like, the film industry is what taught me why we need unions, because I started off as a PA. And they literally try to break your will, break your spirit. It's a lot like the army, honestly. Like everyone in the industry is like, a lot of army, like military people morph into the film industry because it's so familiar in terms of hierarchical and like hazing, and like how much can you take? Only the strong will survive. If you have to really want to be here, you know, get paid like nothing, work 16-hour days and like it, right? And in the film industry, thank God I had mentors, and they would pull me aside and be, and I've talked about this before, do not let them see you run. They, like, if you let them see you run, if you let them see, especially the longer I'd been in the beginning, of course I didn't know any, and like whatever, the PAs are always going to get treated like crap. But if you have no respect for yourself, no boundaries, and no union to protect you, they will literally, like, they will extract everything everything so that you have nothing, no life, no friends, no nothing because you are so burnt out. And then you still can't pay your bills. And so luckily I had some very strong mentorship where they were like, no, Melanie, right? I mean, even in terms of rates, they were like, don't take what they offer, negotiate. And I was like, oh, okay. Because I wanted it so bad. I was like a Pickme for work, right? And I also just, I don't know, I just thought suffering was part of life. I don't know. And so it was so uncomfortable for me to be like, I mean, I'd be like, oh my God, because I just go into like these trauma responses because daddy, you know, like the first AD is like the daddy of the set. And if he's a bully, then I'm just like, I would go into like all these fear, like trauma, fawning crap. And then, but my boss would be like, and I'd be like, okay, walk. You know what I mean? Because they will eat you alive in that industry, especially if you don't have a union. And so crafty and PAs and a lot of people working in indie film, they don't have unions. That's why Hannah from Rust going to prison maybe because she had no union. And they worked that woman to death. Anyway, I've already talked about this, y'all. When you have no one fighting for you, it is you versus Alec Fork you Baldwin, the big old bully who's gonna pin everything on you. Anyway, don't get me started. I'm still so mad about that. And if you say she had one job, I'm blocking you. Okay. So then when they went on strike in 2008, when the writers went on strike, all of us I had been in props for a while, but I wasn't in the union yet because it takes a lot of money. And this big old application and all these days that you have to prove, you have to beg to get into the union, right? And then they usually reject you at least once just to be like, are you sure you want in? Right? Unless you have a daddy who's also in the prop, in IATSE and all the other ones, you have to work hard to get in the union, right? But I understand I understand the mentality behind it, right? But I will be pro-union, pro-labor, pro-communities. Like, I had no idea how screwed you are when you do not have a community of people looking out for you, right? In the film industry, it was the most terrifying example. I was put in danger so many times. I was like freezing to death on set. So many situations I'm like, oh my God, I'm not okay, but there's no one who's gonna like help me because I'm just crafty or, just the props assistant or whatever. So during the writer's strike, I couldn't find work. I'm pretty sure this was during the writer's strike. I don't know. It was one of these times where I couldn't find work for a while because I'm like the last on the list because I'm not in the union, right? And so I got a job working for the Census. Now, my dad worked for the government for, I don't know, his whole life because, he had mental problems and he wanted to have health insurance. So he worked a job he hated for his entire career because of the benefits, right? And I never really understood. He made fun of the government all the time and how like they just want you to just be like, check this box, like they don't want like, free thinkers. They just want to make things simple, whatever. And you just have to play the game, there's no room for nuance. And I had never worked for the government before, right? I'd been like all these random jobs, the physical labor and exciting jobs or whatever. And when I worked for the Census, it was crazy. Because I was working in Astoria in Queens, right? Queens is like the most diverse county in the nation or one of them. And it was honestly one of my favorite experiences ever working for the Census because I used all my skills and I got to talk to people. And oh my God, they invited me in for tea and we watched American Idol, but like in India version. It was amazing. It was like traveling around the world, but just each door, right? And God, I love New York so much and I miss it, but it's too stressful to live there and too expensive. Anyway, but I remember when I first, the first couple weeks or so, I was too fast because I walk fast, I'm efficient, and I also knew how to get these questions answered in the fastest way because I saw these answers and because of all the emotional labor that I already knew I had to put into it, I was like, oh, this question is like super offensive. So I knew how to like just be like, okay, this question is like ridiculous and it's phrased whatever, but I knew how to like get their trust, right? Because when someone from the government is knocking on your door and you have immigrated from another country, legal or not, and it's the US government, terrifying. Actually terrifying. I can't imagine the level of fear that I brought coming into the door. But what I also knew is that nothing is going to happen to them, and that actually not answering these questions is going to negatively impact the community, and it's not tied to immigration. And if I'm wrong about this, please let me know. But that was what I was told. So there was a few things that I realized right off the bat. Because I was really good at getting people to trust me because of all of my, I'd been traveling for my jobs, living in my truck for 5 years in parking lots all over the place. I literally entertained people for a living in rafts. I led people in the wilderness. I assessed the emotional needs of teenagers, and all kinds of people in the wilderness. I really knew how to sense where people are at really quickly because of, first of all, from, being raised by a narcissist and having a thermometer up the butt of everyone around me just as a trauma response survival mechanism. But also because all my jobs had really taught, and a waitress! Waiting tables will teach you how to read people real fast, right? And so with that, and me just in the film industry, right? And so I was just banging out all these things really quickly. And one day I was not wanting to eat lunch when I was supposed to eat lunch because I just wanted to get it all done. And my boss was like, no. I don't care what time you actually had lunch. Say you had lunch between 12:30 and 1 or we're going to have the big problem. And I don't care when you have your lunch break. You're out there in the field. I don't care. But you need, I was like, okay. Every time I tried to make anything more efficient, I would get punished. Not punished by my boss, who was actually pretty cool. But what I realized is they didn't, that every time I was too fast, I was screwing over my coworker. Because I remember there's a really old lady doing this. She was 70 something. And I was like, okay, I'm running circles around this woman. I'm canvassing so many more than her. And by doing that, I'm making her and some other people look bad, right? So I didn't want to make them look bad. And then I also realized a few weeks in that I was actually robbing everybody of their job security, because what nobody told us is that after our section was done, we may not get another section, and that's it. So all this training was just for a few weeks or something. And I was like, whoa, crap. So I was like, okay. We all were like, okay, so the point now is to go as slow as possible to have job security, because if we get this done fast, we're all screwed, right? So what I started realizing, I started getting done really fast, and then I'd sit on a bench and read a book for a while. It's not my fault that I'm really fast at this. I don't know how to go slower, so I just started to look at everything I did at that job in order to make sure we all get paid, make sure that we get as much work as we were promised instead of being penalized for doing it too well. I started to see that it actually doesn't benefit other people to be the best on the team. It doesn't benefit me either. I get screwed because in the film industry, once they started seeing me run on one set, now they expect that every day, right? I even actually helped train people on this team because they started pairing us up because of one guy, nobody would answer the door because instead, this is I swear to God, women's skill sets, men are not taught emotional intelligence, right? And we're not only expected to do all this emotional labor, and we're taught this, we have to, so that the men in our homes don't unalive us, right? So every woman I know is very good at emotional labor. I'm sure there's exceptions, okay? But this guy was going on to, when they paired me up, I was like, no wonder this guy can't get anything done. He would knock on the door, bang, 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 bang. And I was like, you really think a woman at home by herself with 4 children and she's an immigrant, is going to answer the door with do, 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 right? So I started making him hide right there, and I'd be like, da, 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 da. And I'd be like, hey, just so you know, I'd explain, look, they're gonna make me keep coming back here until I get this information. And if it's not me, it's gonna be a man. A scary man, and they're like, oh, okay. We just needed the numbers because, again, if they didn't answer the questions and they wanted to avoid it, then they wouldn't be counted in the numbers, and that means less tax dollars for that community. So, the census is really important for tax purposes and how they allocate money, right? You got this white dude, scaring the crap out of everybody. So anyway, I really loved that job. Too bad it was for the government, and too bad that like they didn't pay crap, and they screwed us in the end too. They were like, oh, I guess that's it, we're done. And like we were like, wait, all of us are unemployed and we don't know what's next. Like, but at least my team mindset instead of the individual mindset that is so it's just rooted in like the U.S. American, right? Like patriarchy, white supremacy culture, hyper capitalism, individualism, like all that stuff. It's not good. Like I know that, but like I started to see it in everything. I'm like, with my relationships to everything, the individual stuff, I don't want it anymore. I don't want it because I don't benefit from it. People I love don't benefit from it. My coworkers don't benefit. We all get screwed. And then when I dated that man, that's when it finally clicked that with all these systems of power, they just want to exploit you and exploit you. And the more you do, the less they respect you. First of all, I didn't date men at all, right? But like that relationship with that man, the more I did, the worse I was treated. I literally became, not literally, but I have always been child free. I have never wanted to have children. I will never have children. It's too late now. I'm 46. I mean, that's not true. I probably could get pregnant still, but like, I'm not gonna have children. And I already knew that, but dating this man, I was like, oh, I would have been a really good mom. I am actually very nurturing and caring when I have to be, but I don't want to be, right? But I saw in an interpersonal relationship that the more I cared about this relationship, the more I enabled this man's behavior, the more I compromised myself, the more boundaries I crossed with myself about in terms of what I would allow, the more I gave, the worse my health was, the more unsafe I was, the more he exploited me. It is literally like an insatiable beast. The king babies, capitalism, white supremacy, it literally eats itself. It's a cancer. And once I saw like, oh my God, that's like when I think of these billionaires, nothing is enough. Oh, I'm a billionaire. I want to have 10 billion now. It's like it's an addiction, right? And what is the heart of addiction? I mean, and I say this as someone who struggled with my own addiction. When I was the most selfish person, right? Like when I'm just consuming and consuming, it's never enough and it's never enough and it's never enough. I'm like not aware of anyone else, right? So the only thing that got me out of that relationship was my community. Thank God I had a good community. Those women saved me, right? My life has always been better when I have been trying really hard to build community and have the community spirit, but not the go-to girl, sacrificial lamb, pick me, cool girl, right? It never did well. And I know that stuff is like a lot of us, and especially the more marginalized, you don't even have a choice, right? But what I'm saying is that once I finally really worked on my relationships and some of these other things and learned how to like really set boundaries and respect myself and come from a place, the last place for me, one of the hardest places is work. It is work. I finally stopped writing because my writing is at the level where I should be paid a certain level because of my experience and my worth and having so many viral articles and so many bylines. And then, the pandemic, they're like, try to go back to making me pay like a beginner writer stuff. And I mean, I became more and more bitter and resentful. And I'm like, no, every time I accept wages like this for someone at my level, I am screwing everybody. So you know what? Sorry, if you're not going to pay me my rates, I'm going to find somewhere else. So, on the Clock app, they shadow ban me. Cool. Like, I don't get as much, right? Like, wherever it is that I'm being exploited, I'm like, okay, like I could take it for a while, but at a certain point, I know that the more I participate in my own devaluation, the more I harm other creators and other people that I work with. And the same thing with dating. Once I started realizing that every single time I let a man treat me like crap because I didn't respect myself, I was co-signing the lie that he was telling himself that that's okay and women are okay with this. And I didn't want to be a part of that lie anymore. And finally learning how to like, not, fake O's, not just go like let men talk to me that way. Like the more I started to see I'm harming other people and myself by doing too much.